Good afternoon and welcome to our third day and final of the second annual Nat King Cole Generation Hope Educators Conference entitled Equity and Access in Music Education, sponsored by Nat King Cole Generation Hope with the generosity of the Selz Foundation. My name is Edrick Rhodes and it's been a pleasure being your facilitator the last 2 days. Over the last couple of days, we have taken a deep dive into equity and access in music education through various perspectives from 6 incredible clinicians from across the country, 2 more today. We hope you enjoyed the sessions and take away some promising practice that you can put into action this upcoming school year. Before we start the nuts and bolts of our sessions today, we all know that wellness, mindfulness, and mental health has finally been placed at the forefront of our personal and professional growth. With that said, we would like to start the session with a mindfulness minute with Mrs. Brittany Swindle, Director of Bands at Petal High School in Petal, Mississippi.
Good afternoon. Just to make sure you can hear me, can I get a thumbs up? All right. So while the task of this conference is so important and we are in this field for our students, I am actually here for you today. And if you weren't with us yesterday, something that I do every day to take care of me before I show up and take care of my students is I pull affirmation cards. And these that I'm using with you today, I got directly off Amazon. They're called Less Anxiety Affirmation Cards. And I actually call these my tough love cards because they force me to give other people some tough love and be a little bit selfish. I have some that are more uplifting, but I'm going to share one with you today. And then we're actually going to do a little bit of meditation. And I want to encourage you to download the Calm app, CALM. It is free for educators if you sign up with your school email. And it has lots of guided meditations, short, long. We're going to do a short one today because meditation is actually very difficult to do. It's hard for us to turn our brains off. But the card that I pulled for you today reads, I am more important than the things I need to do. I pull one of these at random every day. Today, I pulled one intentionally for you. So if you will, we're going to take you through a short guided meditation. I want you to find a comfortable seat. And if you need to turn your camera off and feel more comfortable, feel free to do so. I want you to find a comfortable seat and just close your eyes. I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And I want you to relax your forehead. I want you to relax your jaw and pull your shoulders away from your ears. I want you to take another deep breath in and feel the physical tension leave your body. I am more important than the things I need to do. My health and well-being, physical, mental, and emotional, come first and above any task that awaits me. The expectations of this world will never stop, even if I try to answer every call. I can say no and manage my own expectations in an effort to put myself first. I am not any less effective as an educator for the decisions that I make for the sake of my own health. Because if I am not at my best, I cannot give my best to my students. Therefore, I have to give the best to myself. I am more important than the things I need to do. So you can open your eyes. That was just a very quick, short guided meditation. I am by no means an expert. This is just something that I have self-taught and do every day. I highly encourage you to download that Calm app, get some affirmation cards off of Amazon, and give yourself 5 or 10 minutes every day just for your own mental and emotional health. Thank y'all.
Thank you so much, Brittany, for that moment to refresh our minds and inner self. Our first clinician today is Mrs. Jeanette McCune. Jeanette McCune, Director of School and Community Programs at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, provides strategic leadership and vision for the Kennedy Center's local and national arts education partnerships with schools and community-based organizations. The school and community programs include DC School and Community Initiatives, Changing Education Through the Arts, Turnaround Arts, Ensuring the Arts for Any Given Child, and Partners in Education. Prior to her appointment as the lead for school and community programs, Jeanette served as director of DC School and Community Initiatives from 2001 to 2017, leading the Kennedy Center's relationship with Washington, DC public and charter schools and local community collaborators, and was lead for the former Dance Theater of Harlem residency at Kennedy Center and musicals in the schools. Jeanette's current program portfolio includes directing a comprehensive partnership with DCPS and the DC Charter Schools, performance access programs, Any Given Child, and Youth Council. As an appointed member of the Kennedy Center's Social Impact Task Force, Jeanette contributes to vision and planning for the Reach campus expansion and collaborative programming with the DC arts community. Jeanette serves as president of the Duke Ellington School of the Arts Partnership, DSAP Board of Directors, and additionally serves on boards of directors of the DC Arts and Humanities Education Collaborative and the CapX Lab School. Jeanette earned both her BA in music minor in business and an MBA from Drake University in Des Moines, Iowa. With no further delay, speaking on access and equity from a national lens, please welcome Mrs. Jeanette McCune. Good afternoon, Jeanette.
Thank you so much, Edrick. It is a pleasure and honor to be able to spend time with you all today. And I just want to, again, reiterate that, first of all, very grateful for the meditation moment. We are more important than the things we have to do. And I think that also connects to the work that we're going to talk about today, which is that there are always things to do, but there is always so much more that you can do when you do it together and not alone. And the lens that I really want to talk about today is one of the programs that Edrick mentioned in the introduction, which is our Any Given Child program, which is collective impact and really looks at the ways that we as a collective can be engaged in ensuring that arts education is available for all of our children. And of course, that includes music education. As Edrick mentioned at the top, I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I went to Drake University and my background is as a musician. That's my first love always. I'm a pianist and flutist. And I came into this work in arts education because I was deeply interested from the cultural institution side to look at what our role is in being collaborators and partners with our school-based partners to support arts education for young people. We know that our young people are engaged, of course, in the learning that happens under the great tutelage of our music education professionals and other arts education professionals in schools. But in most cases, our young people are also engaged in music and arts education outside of school. And so it is that collective of how we work together that allows us to be meaningfully involved in the work with our young people. So today I'm going to give an overview of Any Given Child. And I want us to be able to just have some open conversation at the end after I give a little bit of an overview. So I'm going to start to share my screen. And again, please feel free to add questions in the chat. Edrick will also take me through some questions, but we really, again, really value your experience, your perspective, and what you're involved with, so that we can talk openly about what we can do collectively to support arts education and music education for young people. So I'm going to start to share my screen now, and hopefully everything will work. As we know in Zoom world, it usually does. So first, can you all see my screen? Yes, excellent. Okay, so let's start with, I want to give a little bit of a level set about the Kennedy Center in this process. So, the Kennedy Center, sorry, advance 2 slides. So the Kennedy Center, we actually are at the tail end of a 5-year strategic plan. And I feel that a level set is always important. One of the things that was most gratifying to me, this is actually my 20th anniversary today of being at the Kennedy Center. And we have really outstanding transformational and transparent leadership under our president, Deborah Rutter. And one of the things that occurred was a strategic planning process that included staff as part of that process. So I and many other of my colleagues were involved in the vision for the future that we wanted, knowing that we were building the beautiful infrastructure that you can see behind both Edrick and myself in our video, which included the Reach, which is an expanded campus location for informal learning as well as formal experiences, but it really was to bring the arts into the community setting. So as we reviewed our strategic plan, we thought about what our mission is, and I won't read all of it, but I think some of the key words that come out is that, we're the nation's performing arts center. We're for everyone. We're a living memorial to John F. Kennedy, and we're a leader for the arts across America and the world. Leading doesn't mean that you are always the one in the driver's seat. It means that you recognize that there is something that needs to be done, that you gather the appropriate stakeholders in that process, and that you then make sure that that content is available and accessible to all. And equity is really at the center of who we are. So that last statement you see, we welcome all who create, experience, learn about, and engage with the arts. That's about coming from where you are and having an outstanding experience, whether you're the one on the stage, whether you're the one behind the stage or in the audience. This is what it means to be a true artist and what we believe the Kennedy Center is about. So our organization is built on 3 main pillars. And I have to say how excited I was that powerful education ended up being one of those pillars. In our original mandate when the Kennedy Center opened, this also happens to be our 50th anniversary. When our congressional mandate, education is part of one of the main areas that we're responsible for. And teacher professional development, supporting what educators can do to support arts education for their students are a big part of that. So we're delighted that that is part of our main core of our work at the Kennedy Center. And within education, we have our own mission and vision, every art form, every age, everywhere. We're really focused on eradicating barriers to arts learning. That is really critical. And so any given child, which I'll be diving into more, of course, is about eradicating barriers and increasing access. And then we want to set the bar for arts learning, creativity, and accessibility. Arts means for all, and all means all, not who we segment out. And so we at the Kennedy Center want to make sure we live that mission and vision with our work. So just in terms of who we are, why we exist, our reach and depth is pretty significant within education. We're in all 50 states. We have some type of partnership and engagement in all 50 states, Puerto Rico, DC, and 35 countries. Our programs directly through programs that happen directly at the Kennedy Center, as well as our digital processes, supports more than 1.4 million students annually. And through all of our networks, over 10 million are served. These are just important notes. The accessibility and the equity continue to be the focus here. So I want to make sure that the breadth of programming and content that we have is something that we talk about as it is central to our identity of equity. So as Edrick was sharing, there are sort of multiple ways that we work in community at the school level, the professional level, and communities. And so the 5 programs that Edrick mentioned that are under the portfolio he and I actually work on together include our programs in our local community, professional development, Turnaround Arts, which is a program that focuses on supporting those with the greatest need, communities that have often been neglected and for whom arts education is critical to change the culture and identity. Partners in Education is our professional development, collaboration between cultural organizations and school districts, and Any Given Child, which is the program I'm going to talk about, which is collective impact. So what is Any Given Child? We're in our 12th year, and we have 27 communities that we have across the country, and you'll see a map shortly of where we are situated. But I think the key things to be to draw to your attention is that this is around collective impact. And for those of you who may be, many of you are probably familiar with that term, but I'll just give a short definition, not to make an assumption. Collective impact is really about what we collectively do, those who both directly influence arts education, such as obviously our school-based educators, arts, as well as non-arts, our school district leadership. It includes our city leadership. It includes certainly our arts and cultural institutions. We all have a direct impact on what happens in arts education. But it also includes things like our philanthropy community, our business community, higher education, others who have an opportunity to positively impact what happens for young people in arts education. I think other key moments and key strategies associated with Any Given Child is around the idea that it's locally owned decision-making. We get national and state mandates all the time concerning music and arts education for our young people, but we really do need to contextualize it within our own community. What are the art forms that are unique to our own community? What are our traditions? What are our resources that are available? And so it really needs to be made, those decisions need to be made at the local level of the context of music and arts education. And then how can you best deploy those resources to our young people? And as we know, all of us who are involved with this work that are educators, the focus is on data and strategy. What we're looking at is not focusing on a specific program that usually has a beginning and an end date, an expiration date, for lack of a better term. we're trying to think about how can we have long-term vision for arts education being a priority for our young people. And that includes being able to review and look at data associated with arts education provision that happens both within our schools and within our community settings, what happens both in the in-day and out-of-school day programs, but also what are our strategies to continue to improve those opportunities, and not only to improve, because we often talk about improvement, but we also have to talk about maintenance. How do we ensure that this is work that we were all consistently and consistently invested in doing for the long-term outcomes of our young people? How do we keep this fresh and at the forefront? So that's just a quick overview of any given child, although we will certainly continue to talk about it. So our goals and outcomes as it relates to access and equity in arts education is to develop long-term goals for our community, to establish an infrastructure. How do we keep this work going? Is there a backbone organization or a centralized hub that continues to inform and mobilize us as a community to invest in music and arts education? We develop support systems, funding, and most importantly, we need to continue to communicate and collaborate to do cross-sectional collaborative work that focuses on the common good of arts education and music education for our young people. So this is a little bit of detail, but we do have a rigorous process to select communities. Assuring readiness. Collective impact, I would say, is not necessarily for the faint at heart. It is something that requires a little bit of taking yourself out of ego. A lot of times we get focused as music organizations and other arts organizations to be the saviors and want to do a work alone. But true equity work relies on people working together, recognizing where their strengths and what the assets that they have and how they can best be used to support children and their development. But many of us can't do it alone. And that's why the impetus behind collective impact is us doing this work together, finding common ground, finding common values and shared values. And so we ask communities, while we actually don't have an expiration date for collective impact, the investment part that happens from the Kennedy Center has a minimum 4-year expectation. And we ask communities to make sure they commit to that. And we will be sharing this deck as well. So please don't worry, you don't have to take notes rigorously. We will be sure to share this information through the Nat King Cole Foundation. So I talked about sort of 3 important players, and at the center is the community. It's really difficult to do collective impact work if you don't have the ongoing commitment and investment of sort of the 3 outer components of this triangle and this ellipsis. The school chancellor superintendent is really critical. What are the priorities, needs, interests as it relates to arts and music education, and in fact, the overall development of young people? How does investment in the arts and arts education improve the overall outcomes for the school? The only ones who can really speak to that are our school leadership, those who are decision makers around arts education provision and access for our young people. So they are one of the critical partners in this work. The second area is our city or municipal leadership or county leadership. So a city mayor, county mayor are asked to be a part of this process and to engage, again, ongoing about what is the identity of arts education in the community. How does music and arts education help to make this a better place? And why is the investment in arts education that happens with young people critical to building and sustaining a healthy community? And then a lead arts organization or cultural institution usually serves as the hub or conduit for our work for collective impact, because they are the ones that are bringing us all together. It's not that that lead or arts organization or cultural institution is the sole decision maker. The objective is for them to be a hub to bring people together, to create community voice, and to assure that the work continues to move forward under that shared decision-making process. And so our community arts team is made up of a variety of cross-section stakeholders, including those 3 entities, but it includes others that we talked about a little bit earlier, which I'll share on the next slide. So when you pull a community arts team together, those stakeholders include these, and please don't think the size or color has anything to do with the import. We actually need everyone in order to be effective in collective impact work. And so the philanthropic community, who are very large decision makers and influencers, it's really important for them to be at the table, to be able to share and look at what the long-term sustainability of collective impact is. Our higher education community, which oftentimes, of course, not only is the space for where our young people go when they complete their K-12 education, but it's often the space where educators come from and are employed from school district to employ school districts. So many of our teacher education programs are oftentimes embedded in those communities, and they're important stakeholders in the conversation. Communications and media. making sure we have a strong process for social media, news releases, working with the press to make sure that the focus on arts and music education remains important to our community. The business community, how do those who have a strong education in music and arts, how are they contributing and becoming worthwhile employees and members of our community long-term who help with the innovative work that we do? Our research community helps us to make sure that we have great data that we can share out and continue to keep all stakeholders informed. Our local government, our arts organization, our school district who directly serve our young people in terms of music and arts education. And Kennedy Center serves as a hub and connects us to all of our other communities because there's a lot that we can learn from each other in collective impact. So our process, 1 year is a strategic planning year. We usually want to, and again, with collective impact, you really want to have at least 4 years of investment to look at change as it relates to the work that you're doing and how the investment in arts education is having an impact on young people. And as we said, there are 27 communities that are part of our work now. We're getting ready to add new communities from across the country. And with that sustaining, we look for ways to stay connected to one another and to share effective practices for how we can collectively involve ourselves in improving arts education for young people. So I think one of the things that's really, really important, I think sometimes for us in the arts education community, certainly sometimes in the cultural community, and sometimes even in our school districts, we have assumptions that we make concerning the provision and why we think things are working or not, why we think deployment of arts education may not be going as well. But one of the things we really want to be sure is we're collecting robust data routinely, accurately, and then disseminating that information. And so we ask for confirmation from stakeholders on both sides, from the arts and cultural community and from our school districts themselves. So we have surveying process, a mapping tool to look at where arts education is offered for our young people. And we do surveys of arts organizations and artists as they are important collaborators in this process. What we hope to be able to find out and what we know we are able to find out is from the beginning, the 24 hours of our lives, how are young people able to engage in music and arts education? And so being able to gather that data, understand it, and then using that information to help us make decisions about how to improve access to music and arts education is what our goal is for this program. So, of course, the Kennedy Center provides resources to our communities. I won't go into this ad nauseum, but what I will say is in phase 1, which is our first year of deep dive of understanding our community, the Kennedy Center wants to make sure we bring our new communities in with other existing communities to learn more about collective impact and strategies to sustain the work. We also want to make sure we provide some financial support to our communities that are involved in this work. So there is funding to support arts integrated work, bringing teaching artists into the community to support direct programming and opportunities within that area, and of course, supporting our communities to come to the center. We also provide technical support. I was involved with one community that's getting ready to join our program. We've been doing a lot of pre-consultation and preparation as they embark on this work. And so ongoing consultation support is important. And then continuing to support arts education resources as your community engages in the work. And then in 5 years and beyond, we have additional resources and reimbursements to support education. This is the map of the United States, of course, as you know, and these are geographically where our communities are. What I hope you'll notice from this is that the Kennedy Center as an arts education national entity wants to make sure that we reflect arts education, the reality across the country. And so there are small rural communities, urban and suburban communities, large districts, small districts. Some communities we have as little as 4 schools that are involved, and they serve as examples for ways that others can get involved in collective impact. Collective impact is we believe, is effective in all types of environments. We also have it in some of our largest communities like Southern Nevada, where there are hundreds of thousands of students that are there and engaged in the work. And so again, the process of working collectively to improve and impact arts education is critical. But the maps and all of those things are certainly helpful. We wanted to share where our phasing is, which is just, again, how long our communities have been involved. And you may have noticed that I showed earlier, 5 years and beyond, technically communities can work independently, but none of our communities wanted to leave. And now more than 2/3 of our communities are all 5-year plus communities that are deeply committed to collective impact and working together. So I just thought that that was really telling. And we have new communities that will be joining in the next year or so as we begin to live with the pandemic and still understand the importance and investment in music and arts education for our young people. But I think beyond hearing from me, it's important to hear from the voices of our communities. So I'm going to share a video from one of my colleagues, Springfield, Ohio, which is one of our smaller communities, about, and from the voices of their participants, what arts education and collective impact has done. So I'm going to play this video for us now.
You know, it's really, I think most things are, it's just the luck of being in the right place at the right time, doing something that you feel absolutely committed to. The children of our community will have such complete educations by the things that have been available to them through all of the agencies that participate in the programming here in Springfield. It's nothing that any one individual or one program has done. It's how these groups have worked together and the willingness to try that and to learn that. What I look at individually, and when I look back over the time that I've been lucky enough to do this, it's really more of, you know, how will the children benefit? What will they have done by the time they go from kindergarten to 8th grade at least? And then what better things will be in place as they go into high school? How will their knowledge have been expanded by the things they've done? And then making sure that all of the agencies, as we work ahead, are actually driving the initiative. It can't be driven by one person pushing it. So what we need to do now is make sure that we work qualitatively. We look at how these programs would benefit children, how they can play off of one another, how the agencies themselves might align with each other and present dual programming, and find ways in which what the kids are exposed to, what they have interaction with, what they're really involved with as they participate in the programming. How those things can improve and continue to grow regardless of how the program is structured. It can stand on its own at this point and does so very nicely, and that's through the guidance of the agencies. The good fortune is really mine to have been able to have been part of this, but the opportunities themselves are provided by all of the arts agencies, and that's where the real credit lies.
So I again want you to hear from the voices of those who were involved in the work. And I hope some big takeaways that you got from that part of the presentation was how the acknowledgement of children at the center, the opportunities that children would have in music and arts education over the course of their career, and the acknowledgement that the support came from a variety of stakeholders in the community who were making sure that every child is able to engage in a robust and rigorous arts education. So again, as data people, it's sort of helpful, I think, to see information around what does this look like. So this is the same community for the video that we just saw from Springfield, Ohio. And what you can see is the presenting arts agency, the number of young people that were impacted in this community, and the aggregate both financial investment that came not from one organization, one school district, one entity, but the collective, and nearly $150,000 of costs for producing content, transportation costs, the number of impacted presenters, and the number of students that were able to engage in this program as a result of this collective work that happened by the community, sharing the resources and assets of their music and arts education program with their young people. How rich and exciting this is, and why the community would want to continue to do this work. So I thought that that was just some really compelling statistics that are worth sharing to see what your impact can be when you don't try to go it alone. One other video I want to share, because it's important to hear from young people themselves. And this is a community also in Ohio, but it's Springfield, Ohio. And they've been involved in a collective impact for quite a few years. I think what I really want you to also know is that this isn't about the Kennedy Center. This is about the communities. And we have the privilege and honor of serving and supporting communities and doing collective impact work. But really it's about the community and how they're working together to transform arts education practices for young people. So this young lady, I want to, she should be a president. I see her as future president, but the young people's voices and what arts education means to them, I think may be important for you all to hear. So please stand by while I play this video.
My biggest message with arts in the schools is that no matter what different background you come from, no matter what it is that you have going on at home or anything, arts is an outlet and it is a leveler so that you can come to the table and you guys can have one thing established, that you got this one thing in common. And if half the world could come together and find things they got in common with one another, that's half the battle.
It seems like lots of times when we do projects, we always integrate art. And I like that because it's fun and it gives you a better understanding, but you also get to do both and like you can see which one you like better. It was different because I've never done anything like that. So when we're starting to do it this year, it's nice to have something different, something that I can relate to so I can learn better and understand it better.
It made it easier to remember, so we had a visual image, and it also made it easier to understand, so it wasn't all textbook. I'm
a very visual learner. That's always how I've learned. Diversity is what fuels the creative mind, and it fuels inspiration.
Because I myself am a visual person, so with just like textbooks is not going to work, so I like getting hands-on so I can see it and I can experience it.
And it also helps me gain my confidence a little bit while I'm talking to my teachers or to other classmates as well. Yeah, because we're more like doing it more physical, and we're actually getting our hands dirty and things, and we're doing a lot of research, and we're just gonna have fun.
You need to have an outlet creatively so that you can function normally.
It wasn't all just write a report, do all that. It was have fun with it.
I enjoyed acting and being able to express who I am.
Like we've been taking different cultures in like art class, and we've been researching them and learning more about them. And then we're taking things that relate and putting them in our project, so that way we can have a better understanding of culture and comparing and contrasting the different cultures.
And the one thing that like I really take away from Warren G. Harding and like being in the Warren City Schools is the stew that you get put into as a person, you know, and then leave it with such flavor because you're so used to every culture, every tax bracket, every religion, every color, everything. And
I know that when we're doing all these art integrations, it's never like an alone project. So in the future, I know you have to work with lots of people that you may not like, but you learn to get along with them and get the job done. We learn to work together as a team and learn to cooperate and bounce ideas off of each other.
To have kids know that like the art is the leveler, like he's just the same as you and he's completely different, but y'all got this one thing in common.
It's fun when you mess up because then you get to get better at it. And doing it more and more, we're starting to get better at it and we're starting to enjoy it more. If we like integrate art and integrate different things, then everyone could be able to learn the way they need to learn.
I think it's great with any given child, like music and arts and being creative, like it gives you something to be proud of. It gives you something to work at. It gives you something that like hang your hat on, where your music and the arts is not a pipe dream.
When I'm president, I will make sure any given child is in every school.
I told you, Trinity for president, right? But again, hearing from the young people about what arts education, our investment as adults in working together, and the breadth of what they can achieve and experience in their lives as a result of us working together is really what equity work is about. So I just wanted to share for this type of work, collective impact, and this is under the lens of any given child. Of course, I'd say the biggest successes of our communities is increased student access, having this robust data that you can share and collect around arts education provision. The vision and actions are your own. It's your own community. So if you're doing this work, if you're already doing some of this work, remain encouraged, but know this is how we really get to equity outcomes for all of our children, is by sharing that community vision and action and looking at the data. We realize we can do more together than alone through our increased capacity. And by working together and showing that you're working collectively, believe it or not, I have found, and many of our communities have found, that they're able to get more support because they are able to get a larger scale grants and other funding through agencies such as the National Endowment for the Arts, other foundations, corporations, but they look to see what are the outcomes that you're going to be able to achieve. And it's a lot harder to do some of those on your own than it is to do them collectively. And for us, we also, the exchange, which is when we bring all of our communities together, is a real strong area. I'd say being able to continue keeping track of and keeping up momentum in communities can be a challenge. And this is why effective communication, reinvestment, and willingness to talk about both the hard things as well as to stay committed to the work are very strong. I'm going to skip ahead because I really want us to get to questions. Really, the only thing I was going to say is that beyond the presentation was that for us with any given child and with collective impact in general, we have really learned how important it is for those that are part of the community to be a part of the decision making and to have voice concerning what their interests and needs are around music and arts education. What I've learned certainly is that we want to be mindful of being an asset-based model versus a deficit-based model in our work. Not only what things are going wrong, but what are the things that are going right that we want more of to be able to have an impact in our community. I certainly saw that as a young student growing up in Des Moines, Iowa, and music education. What were the things I loved? What did I care about? And what did I want more of? But we really need to listen and include those voices in that work. So I'm going to stop sharing and we're going to open it up for, well, I'm going to let Edrick ask me some questions, I'm sure, and then we'll open it up for conversation. So I'll stop screen sharing now.
Again, thank you so much, Jeanette. And first, before I get into anything, I just want to say congratulations on your 20th year at the Kennedy Center. We appreciate your vision, your leadership, your kindness, your thoughtfulness, and all those other things, verbs and adjectives that you put into action. So thank you so much for your work and your service.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you so much as a colleague.
Great. So I have a question for you. It just popped up in my chat. It's probably more general, but I mean, we can both attack this too as well. How can we make connections with decision makers to promote music education? You know, it was really a two-part question, because that was the second part of my question I was going to ask you, especially when you start talking about the community team with the superintendent, mayor's office, and lead artists. So that kind of plays into what I was going to ask. So again, how can we make connections with decision makers to promote multicultural music or music education?
Well, ironically, and I'm sure many of our participants, as well as those who will be watching later, you know how often we get called on to perform, to share. When there is a major moment, we are often the ones that are called on to have that moment. And when we have those moments, we want to make sure we are prepared also with data associated with how these programs are able to happen in the first place. How many times have many of you been received one of those calls? Oh, there's a large event that's going to be happening with the superintendent. It's going to be maybe announcing the new strategic plan, or there's going to be a moment to bring in other stakeholders into our city, and you get the call and you have that moment and you do come out and you perform. But what people see is the end product. When you have those moments, be prepared with a short sheet about what it is that what's happening at your school, who are community stakeholders that are involved, what is the amount of arts education that's there. Have a student, I must say, always have a student or two ready who can speak to their experience. And if you have a performative moment in those moments, be sure that you have maybe students introduce, share the experience, and as well as have some of those key data points. Oftentimes our stakeholders don't have a lot of time, but what they do want is some speaking points. And if you can relate back to the investment that they've made as a city or as a school district And they're able to have that data to speak to the positive things that an investment in music and arts education has done for their students, and then have an actual tangible example of those young people that are there. That's a PowerPoint. So not just the deck, but a point of power, I should say, so that you can have that ready. Also, again, if there are press moments, you'll want to have a couple of statements ready. If you work with your communications office, again, use positive praise. I can't say enough about, oftentimes we may be in a position where we can make positive change, but we may come with our complaints and our areas of concern. People, I think, are much more open to when you bring not only a concern or a need, but you have a potential solution and you have some background data information to share about it. So come prepared, have those data points ready, both for those moments with stakeholders as well as those without. I can share something that's kind of happening in real time in our own jurisdiction. Obviously with COVID and the things that are happening in the world, access to music and arts education has been challenging. We actually tried to activate for one of our local schools a number of stakeholders who could help bring what the concern or need was and a suggestion for how to improve it into this particular situation. So we pulled some data points around, this is what music and arts education provision does. This is the profile of our students and how well they are doing. And without these particular resources, and we were really specific about what those resources were that we needed. We're underfunded in this particular institution, and what we need is additional resources to support more educators being able to continue to provide this high quality arts education program. The other data points that we made sure that we had were data not only around the music and arts education program and how fantastic that is, but are we seeing supports around students wanting to come to school? Are we seeing less referrals for concerns about student behavior? So all of that collective data around the success of the school, what the concern and need is, and then what's an action item. Then you can go to those stakeholders to say, you've got a gym here in your community, and what can we do to continue to support it as an important asset in our community? I love talking about this, so if you ever have more questions and we can give some tangible examples, we'd be happy to do that. But do know that having your data points ready, some clear action items, and speaking to where the strength is and how you can continue to maintain that strength is a great place to start.
Great. I have another question. So, going back to the community arts team with the superintendent mayor's office, lead arts organization, based on your experience, who do you find probably the most difficult to have that commitment, or who needs the most working into this collective impact?
Yes. So, I think being clear, both of those entities, the mayor's office and both the school district, can be challenging places to go. What they want to know and what they need to hear clearly is, what is my commitment and what's going to be the return on my investment? And they want to know, how much time is it going to take? Is this something that I have to do alone? Is this something that I'm going to have to put a lot of money into? So having some key data points around, there's a 1-year strategic planning process. What we might need from you, I'll give the school district as an example. What will be needed is access to some of the data, aggregated data as opposed to disaggregated. We're not going to do anything that's going to make you look bad, but in fact, we can speak to some of the gifts and the strengths and investments that your community already has. So being clear about what the time commitment is, both for them as an individual and articulating what may be some of the responsibilities that they would have, but then also being able to share what is going to be the outcome. What is it that you're going to be contributing that they can use subsequently that helps to tell a stronger narrative for their story? Same with the mayor's office. I think this is where the Kennedy Center as an entity is a powerful space, or if you are able to secure funding like the National Endowment for the Arts. I want everybody to make sure that they know this. The National Endowment for the Arts is deeply committed to supporting collective impact work. They have emerging collective impact support as well as ongoing collective impact support for those who have been doing this for a while. But when you have a stakeholder like the Kennedy Center, the National Endowment for the Arts, or another large funder who's interested in that work, that gets those individuals to the table. And because we are assuring that in this work, it aligns to district priorities, citywide or countywide priorities, articulating what those are and how this work will be supporting it, not creating a new strand of work that takes away from, I think is really critically important. And that's where agencies like ours can be a space to share success in other communities, and how it has begun to change or transform a community is really important. So looking at, like, I would share these videos, for instance, from other communities that have been involved in the work, set up a conversation with another superintendent from another jurisdiction that has been involved with collective impact work. This is where the power of being involved in a network or working with other colleagues can be really powerful, so that it can help you to engage some who may be reluctant or maybe a little resistant at first into engaging the work.
Great. Another question here, evolving with the collective impact and data. Do you foresee any adjustments as we return back to schools and organizational offices? Like, under the pandemic now, do you foresee or foreshadow any kind of adjustments needing to be made as we collecting data to support the work we're doing?
Yeah, I think that, it's interesting, and I know you know this, Edrick, but for us at the Kennedy Center, we realized that the way that arts education was being delivered looks different, especially when our learners were learning at home. We had to look at a variety of methodologies besides in-person participation in content, shorter participation in content, methods of looking at how arts education was delivered virtually. So we do need to make sure that the data that we're collecting relates to real-time provision, and that there are a variety of ways that provision can happen, both that which is sort of self-directed learning, as well as that learning that is facilitated, which is what we are usually more accustomed to as those of us who are in both the creative youth development space, as well as those who work within school districts. So understanding what our young people have access to, how often they're engaging with that, as well as some of the responses that they may have around social emotional learning. What are the things that kept me engaged and motivated? What type of instruction was most helpful to me? Getting some of that anecdotal and survey related data, as well as looking at all of the different ways that arts education and music education provision occurred, is going to be important for us to build into our data toolkits and what we collect.
Great. And again, we have about 5 minutes left. So if you have any more questions, feel free to get them in as quickly as possible. I know for myself, prior to coming to the Kennedy Center in Palm Beach County, we were very interested in Any Given Child, and we had a site visit, and again, going back to where we are with this new norms of travel and just trying to be safe these days. Will there be site visits for a community that's interested, or what would you suggest the community, what should they get together to be prepared for a site visit, if that?
Sure. So that's been living this in real time right now with a new community that's under advisement, I think, or under consideration, excuse me. I think what's really important is to know that, in my opinion, virtual has been a game changer. When we do site visits in the past that are in person, trying to find a day and time that you can get important stakeholders like the mayor, the superintendent of schools, cultural organizations, executive directors, and others, it could be a battle. It could be really challenging because there are a lot of things going on. I was able to actually have a phone call with 3 different superintendents in a local jurisdiction on a 1-hour phone call. That would have been almost impossible in previous times. So thinking about how you can leverage, for equity's sake, being able to bring important stakeholders into the space in a virtual environment, I think, is really critically important. And when we do go back in person, there are some elements that we're going to keep virtual. In an in-person site visit, we do still want to do things like have a chance to see the learning environments. So when we go to a site visit, and we will, as soon as it's safe for us to do so, we will be sure to visit those communities. We try to make sure we get a chance to see what's the community layout. Can we make sure we see what the distance is in terms of geography between arts education resources and music education resources and the young people themselves? Does that correlate with that data that we see concerning provision? What are some of the creative ways that the communities are working to make sure that music and arts education is accessible to young people? And then are there providers who haven't been involved in the conversation? So the site visit gives us a chance to learn more about the community and to give some recommendations and suggestions of ways to bring in voices that may previously not have been heard. It's a learning experience for all of us, but I think sometimes having an outside collaborator and party that works with you can see things that maybe we can't always see that we're so close to ourselves. And so we really feel like when we can, that site visit is an important part, but the ongoing consultation and ability to engage some of the stakeholders whose schedules are so incredibly busy can still be validated through virtual experiences and bringing them together.
Great. And we have one more question. I'm not sure if I can ask how to ask this, but just from your experience being on boards and with the community center and through all the work you've done, just upfront, how do you get a seat at the table with a decision maker? Like, is it a phone call? Is it what are some of your experiences when you really want to get the voice of a person that's a stakeholder?
Yeah, this is many, many years of hard work, I have to say. But I also will say that networking and being introduced to people is everything. I wasn't always the first one at the table. What I will say is sometimes through individuals that may not be as high up on the totem pole, for lack of a better word, there may be a representative who's more of an entry level or a mid-level person who I engage with through volunteering, offering opportunities to, like, we have an opportunity at the center, let me invite you. Sometimes your name is seen so many times after a while, someone's willing to talk to you. I know that may sound a little odd, but barraging them with good news, barraging them with opportunities from your organization. So I'll say at the Kennedy Center, nothing that I would ever consider a conflict of interest, but if there's an opportunity to bring an important stakeholder to an experience of their interest, contacting their office. What are they really interested in? Does this superintendent or does this person love jazz? Do they like this kind of art form? Do they like an exhibit? How can they come and just experience, maybe share their own story about their own arts education? Those things can be really powerful, and bringing them together and wanting to learn more about how they can impact their students. So it's oftentimes I have found trying not to make it about us, but making it about the person that we want to support and how can we uplift who they are, as opposed to coming with specifically asking for a favor. So those to me are some great ways of having been able to start to get my foot in the door, and then to be able to share our message with those data points and information ready to go.
Awesome. Well, on behalf of the Nat King Cole Generation Hope, we thank you so much for sharing your expertise and time today, Ms. McCune, and happy 20th. You have to celebrate.
Oh, thank you. Well, celebrating to me means being able to spend time with outstanding leaders in music and arts education. So I'm grateful for the opportunity today to have joined you. And please feel free to reach out at any time if I can answer any questions about arts education and equity. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, we will now take a short break for coffee, tea, stretching, or anything you need to refresh yourself before we get into our next session that we will promptly start at 2 p.m. Be back very soon.